Welcome to the Cannabis Review, everybody. We've got a great episode for you today. I'm delighted to be joined by Alexej Pikovsky, who's the CEO and co-founder of Alphagreen Group. You might have heard a lot of noise about this company over the last while. They're making plenty of waves in the UK. Alexej, how are you keeping?
Good, doing well. Excited to be here.
Great to have you on the show, mate. I've been looking forward to having you on and learning a lot more about Alphagreen Group. I'm going to kick things off with pretty much a simple start first topic and give everybody an overview of how you got here. Can you tell everybody the story of Alphagreen Group and how you got to here?
Sure. So the story starts actually with me looking into a bunch of industries, bunch of companies as an investment banker at Nomura and the M&A team in 2011. And then kind of spending 6 years as an investor for various family offices and a private equity fund. And basically seeing cannabis doing extremely well in Canada and the US around 2019 and thinking to myself, okay, there is nothing big or nothing in terms of high quality companies in the UK or Europe. Maybe I should look into that. And so I spent a month traveling Canada and California, talking to more than 50 companies, and realized that there is a market to have a platform in Europe to offer top brands to European and UK customers and provide them with the top brands, be it the US brands, Canadian brands, or UK brands. And so that was really the background. And then, it was kind of like, okay, what's the team? And I was really lucky. I have a super strong co-founder and CTO, and he was the CTO of a copycat of Etsy in Germany for many years. And I pitched him the idea and said, look, do you want to join me? And so we launched Alphagreen in October 2019.
Amazing. Yeah, I think having a good co-founder is hugely important to the success of your enterprise for sure. That's a good overview for everybody now on the Alphagreen Group. What I'd like to do is chat about the current landscape of the CBD in the UK. The novel food licenses that's really gone through. I see that they pushed back the deadline again there last week. Can you tell us what you think the CBD landscape looks like in the UK? Is it promising? Are the regulations going in your favor, or is it like the rest of, like not even Europe, but Ireland seems to be living in the Stone Age when it comes to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the UK is making progress for sure. With FSA pushing out the deadline, ultimately gives some brands more time to submit the dossier for the novel food application. We do see that the landscape is huge, right? There are more than 500 brands. I think just on Alphagreen, we have more than 100 UK-based CBD brands. But we also know that probably 70% of them are getting their ingredients from kind of like 5 suppliers. And so what you see is that as long as these 5 suppliers are getting their novel food application validated, let's say 70% of brands will be safe, let's say. At the same time, of course, that whole novel food process brings a lot of, let's say, problems, because it then questions it then basically makes the process of kind of US players launching a brand suddenly in the UK much harder, because the FSA can then argue, okay, well, you've not been on the market before February, wherever, 2020, and you haven't submitted your application, so you can't actually launch a brand, which obviously is kind of like against the free market. So it will be interesting to see, but I think the fact that there is the novel food application and that there is actually some sort of clarity how you get compliant is already better than what's happening in Europe, where the European Court decided CBD is not a narcotic, which was great for industry. But at the same time, the European Court didn't actually say, well, it's a food, right? So it remains somehow a gray area. And so you do see from time to time certain rates on the retail market in Germany where suddenly all the product is now illegal. And then 1 month later, the same retailer puts all the same products back on the retail shelf, saying actually now it's legal again. So you have this kind of zigzag strategy in Europe, which doesn't really help anybody. So in that sense, I think UK is definitely a bit ahead of Europe. And then Ireland, as you say, right? I think Ireland is an interesting market. It actually is a super interesting market from, if you look at THC habits statistics, it's probably the highest kind of usage market for THC, like the kind of black market THC. It's like 20% of the population is using that. It's a statistic. I saw it in the Prohibition Partners and newsletter. So I'm not sure how accurate it is, but ultimately you can argue that there is a huge culture in Ireland, but around the regulation, it's probably closer to what Europe is doing, i.e. not much clarity versus what the UK is trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a little bit of lack of enthusiasm from the politicians here in Ireland to kind of act on what is being applied across European law. Ireland seems to be just lagging behind, but I think it's still some of the scenarios you could pipe down to the police are raiding places that are selling CBD flower, and the police don't have a clue what CBD flower compared to THC or flower looks like. So to them, it's just it's cannabis or it's weed, and they need to lock down on it. So I think it's more having clarity from the government that a bit of education and a bit of training and being able to know the differences, or even being able to apply for a certain license, might be able to clear that up. One thing you might be able to clear up for me, and it's almost like swimming in muddy water when you go through the novel food license applications and everything. The novel food for the UK, does that apply to the EU, or did the EU have a completely separate novel food license that UK companies will have to have as well as the UK one?
So the novel food application right now is only good for the UK one, because it's under the UK FSA. The European has the EFSA, so the European Food and Standard Authority. So it's I guess you can kind of submit the same application, but you need to submit it to a separate authority.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to now finish on our last topic, and it's some of the success stories recently and the listings on the London Stock Exchange. How excited are you guys about the future of the listings over there and some of the IPOs that may be happening?
Well, it's definitely good for the industry that you see a lot more capital coming into it, and cannabis becoming well, an investable, let's say, industry. So you obviously had Cannabis IPOing at 6.5 pence, and now it's trading at 400% up. So I mean, I think north of 25 pence or something. So it's doing extremely well, despite actually having, well, a lot of sales to, let's say, back the story up, right? If you look at the prospectus, it had 14,000 pounds of revenue last year, and it's trading at more than 100 million market cap now. So while it's exciting that you have this, hype and this flow of capital, I'm also very, let's say, cautious to say, okay, these are the companies who are going to be the winners in the future. And what I don't want is obviously a lot of retail investors who suddenly lose a lot of money now and kind of like write off cannabis, when actually cannabis then becomes a much bigger industry and should be a really big sector also for kind of institutional investors. So I think in summary, yeah, you had 3 IPOs in the last 3 weeks doing extremely well, Cellular Goods, MGC Pharma, and Cannabis. At the same time, I'm still very cautious on how the market will perform when they actually see some of the numbers.
Okay. Tell me this and tell me no more. Do you think the European cannabis industry is going to be pharmacy-based for distribution and for sales and kept to a medical, or can you see full-on dispensaries like they have over in North America?
So if you look at the North American market, it's very much split into, yes, you have CVS pharmacy distributing some of the CBD products, but also some of the medical cannabis products. You then have medical cannabis dispensaries, so purely medical cannabis, especially in states where there is no recreational market. And then once there is recreational in a state, so for example, let's say New York, which is about to go rec, you see medical cannabis dispensaries flipping to recreational dispensaries. Reason being that the same customer can then still buy the medical cannabis and show their, let's say, prescription and get the government to reimburse some of the costs. But at the same time, you also open up to a much larger market, which is the rec market. So I actually think a similar evolution will happen in Europe and the UK, with the exception that the medical market is still tiny. So you actually don't even have medical dispensaries, neither you have pharmacies who are selling it. Of course, you can have pharmacies who can dispense it, but it's a very, very little number. So instead, what you have already, let's say, vape shops, CBD shops, and you have just a much more developed online market for the CBD products, which is very different, again, to the North American market, because it's much more THC in terms of kind of like heritage. And so online was never very big, because it was kind of, well, because you needed to pick up the product or you needed to go to the store. So the online was much more about finding the strain in a certain dispensary rather than actually buying the strain and getting it delivered. So the way I see the UK evolving is you will have still the online market being very, very dominant when it comes to CBD. You will then gradually have pharmacies opening up to medical cannabis. And then down the line, you will definitely see the CBD shops and vape shops of today converting to some sort of dispensary structure. But then again, that will be, 3, 4, 5 years in the future, I think.
Yeah, well, I've started to see a lot of, even over here, some of the CBD stores now call themselves CBD dispensaries, and starting to offer CBD flower under 0.2% THC. So I think that's a step in the right direction for allowing the free markets and dispensaries owned by competent human beings who've gone through a full regulatory process to apply for a license to be able to bring to the market, as opposed to limiting to pharmacies and what we know will be inferior cannabis if it does go that route. So let's hopefully it goes the way of the free markets and it all goes well for the next few years for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alexej, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. I know you're a busy man, so I won't keep you too much longer. Hopefully we can get to chat again in the next few months, and we'll do a catch-up and review, and there's a lot more positive news for us to discuss. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. Anybody who wants to check out about Alphagreen, there's the website below. You can go and check it out. It's a great success story, and I wish you all the best for the future, Alexej.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.